Hey gang, pardon me while I ignore you. Alright, I am back up in my upstairs office, as you can see. Still fighting this strange tickling throat cough. Anyway, enough of that. My name's Dan. This is Daily Art Adventure number 937. Can you believe it? It's just called More Sketches. Mark, set, go. Happiness is having a lot of work to do. That's good. I got two paintings downstairs in my painting studio, waiting for me to. One is 95%, 98% finished, and one is 75% finished. But I have a deadline for an illustration. So I've been asked to do 2 more illustrations for a book. And if you follow me often, you've seen these before. Let me pick you up and show you some of the samples. First of all, there's some of the work I'm going to be doing today. Here are some of the previous illustrations. This is a technique that I have developed for this particular client. Here are 2 of the earliest illustrations that I did for him. And I can't remember, now this is so long ago, I can't remember why I did 2 of these. It may have been that I was developing the style. I think that was it. In any case, I believe I like this style the best. So I'm not going to do the finished artwork during this broadcast. I'm just doing sketches, but this is what I'm aiming for. Here are some of the other illustrations just for fun to show you that I've done in this technique. The technique is, in case you miss it, is colored pencil drawing, black-brown outline, blocked in acrylic with gesso mixed, then brown watercolor wash. I actually think there's another one of these here somewhere. Maybe not. All right, here's two of, this is it's the autobiography of a Southern gentleman named Major James Coker. And I don't know, I think we ended up using this one. Anyway, watercolor wash over the whole thing, brown, then lifting out and then finishing with pastel pencil. And some of these I like better than others. Here's actually one of my favorites is, 2 of my favorites. There's one of my favorites is one of the illustrations I'm working on today is going to be Major James Coker, whose thigh bone, femur, was shattered by what is called a mini ball, but it's actually the French word is minier, and that's my rendering of the minier ball that shattered his hip. So that's part of today's illustration, but more on that later. I'll do a separate broadcast. So I have 2 sketches that I'm going to work on today. One is I've already done a couple of rough sketches sent to my client, sketch A and sketch B, and he selected B with a few changes that are spelled out in this email. So that's a second step, second phase. If I would call this a rough sketch, the next stage is going to be a finished sketch. All right, so more about that in a minute. And I also Googled what do factory workers wear in 1890, 1900, and found some photographs. So this photograph is going to inform how I do that sketch. Then the other sketch, as I said, is Sergeant Coker, Major James Coker, wounded, being carried off the battlefield. Ooh, That's a yucky subject matter. All right, so let's just go ahead and I'll walk you through. Hello, Ray. Good to see you again. Hello, Sujit Sharma. Thank you for speaking up. Nice to have you on board. It rings a bell. All right, let me show you. I have to do the next phase, next layer. I have two options. One is turn on my light table. There we go. And I could trace onto a brand new piece of paper, or I can turn it over. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. Now, let me turn this off and indicate that I already did one sketch on this side of this paper, and I have since erased it. Am I making sense? I did one sketch here, turned the paper over, and traced this from this, and then I erased that. All right, so now I'm going to go back the other way. Is that making sense to you? So this now will be my third sketch of this for this illustration. And my client says, take this guy out completely. So that changes the the frame of the illustration a little bit, doesn't it? So let me go ahead and redraw that. Of course, this border is not rigid. It's not an important part of the illustration. I can change it. All right, now. Oh, I forgot to print off some photographs of Mr. Major James Coker, but I've drawn him several times already, so I think I have a pretty good idea what he looks like. A shock, I think, a shock of white hair, a big, full, bushy beard and mustache. Long white beard. This is fairly late in his life. The story that we are trying to indicate in this illustration, and this comes from first-hand testimony, first-hand story that that my client sent to me of some of the men that worked for Major James Coker. You know what? I feel like having his coat open would be better than buttoned up. So the story is that they were at this, it was a industrial type paper company in South Carolina after the Civil War. Now, should he be wearing a vest? I mean, I think he would normally wear a vest. Yeah, I guess so. I'm also conscious that it's South Carolina and it would be 95 degrees. I talked about this when I was doing the first sketch. 95 degrees and 90% humidity in the summer. And here are these men wearing dark wool suits. Oh boy. I'm glad we've gotten over that. Got that out of our system. I talked quite a bit when I was doing this first couple of sketches, and I did you can see me do this in a broadcast. When you're doing sketches like this, you have to be a novelist. You're making up a story, or a better image, you have to be a movie director. You have to picture, you have to, you know, it's up to me to place the characters. It's up to me to make up their gestures, their facial expressions, and so on. So I don't know whether you want to call that I'm a novelist or a movie director, either one. That's all part of the business of being an illustrator, well, really an artist of any kind. Now, however, now that the broad strokes are finished, now the challenge in front of me shifts slightly, and the task before me, he's got a cane. He walked with a cane for the rest of his life because of his shattered left hip. By the way, so not only does the artist, and again, I'm just telling you this again in case, especially in case any young person young aspiring artist is watching. I think probably that a lot more goes into this kind of thing than most people would imagine. For instance, if a person is wounded in their left hip and they have one crutch or one cane, does the cane, the walking stick, does it go in their right hand or the left hand? Again, these are the kinds of things that an artist, in my opinion anyway, that an artist has to think about. And I actually have thought about it quite a bit because, you know, way back when I was doing, well, see, here he is again. Here he is again, hoeing, one hand. And the question, so I did some research. Again, that's my responsibility as an artist, is to find out. Now, I actually had a hunch what the answer was, because in the course of my lifetime, I've been on crutches a couple of times. I was a pretty serious runner, distance runner most of my life, and have had a couple injuries that put me in crutches for weeks at a time. And you want to know the answer to the question? So if a person, let's say if their left hip is injured, which hand does their crutch go in? The answer might surprise you. The answer is either one. And yes, I actually did look it up. I did some research. And that conformed with my personal experience, because having had, you know, one sprained ankle, badly sprained ankle, which one? And the answer is both. The answer is you go back and forth. Anybody who tells you otherwise has never been on crutches for a long time, in my personal opinion. All right, I'm gonna have to do a little mechanics here. I'm going to tape this paper down to my drawing table. You saw me messing with this a little bit. And I'm going to draw this. I'm going to extend this line, draw right on my draw right on my drawing table. And there we go. So the vanishing point is right there. Now, I might as well show you this other trick. Some of you will get a kick out of this. Take a paper clip. I've done this quite a bit. If it looks like I've done this before, well, there's a reason for that. I've done this before. You don't have to do this, of course, but I'm going to create a physical vanishing point. So I'm doing this paper clip pointing up, and I'm just using Scotch tape. I'm hoping that's sticky enough to hold it down. I think it is. That means I don't have to keep looking over there. I might have just done all that work and then discovered, oh, there are not very many vanishing points there. So, and that's all right. Now here's another trick, just in case You want another trick? You can, I just drew a whole bunch of vanishing points. I mean, a whole bunch of lines pointing at that vanishing point. Boy, my language is confusing here. And so you can work quite a bit more quickly when you have a physical vanishing point, because you don't have to keep turning your eyes, you know, left, right, left, right, left, right. You can just slap your ruler right up against that paper clip and go to town. I'm going to do the same thing. Peel all this up. Oh, it sticks really well. I was wondering if it would hold it down. It's doing a really good job. Nice symbiotic relationship, evidently, between this plexiglass light table and this brand of tape, whatever it is, right? So, same thing. Going to move now the drawing over this way. Tape the drawing down because you can't have any wiggle in it. That won't work. And oh, I should have drawn a horizontal mark before I moved that. Oh, my mistake. Oh well. So once again, my vanishing point is way over here. Tape this down. There we go. So that's there. I have a photograph. I failed to show it to you just a minute ago, but I have my client provided me with a photograph of the outside of this building. Oops. Here we go. It should be here somewhere. There we go. So this is the building in which this meeting is taking place, and the one element that I'm taking from it, well, one window here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 windows in the end. And even though it's a log cabin on the outside, I'm assuming it's plastered on the inside. That's just an assumption on my part, so I'm not going to indicate I'm not going, what am I trying to say? I'm not going to indicate logs on the inside of the building. It's a company office, so. All right, so that was quick. I'm done with vanishing points, I believe. So whereas when I did the first rough sketch, I was concerned mostly with the story. By that I mean, where's everybody standing? I was told 2 white employees, 2 black employees, and the boss man being friendly, right? Whoops, I'm sorry. I was told 2 white employees, 2 black employees, and the boss man being friendly. That's the story I'm telling. So I, arm on, hand on hip, arm on shoulder, etc., etc., etc. And then my client came back and said, well, eliminate that guy. 3 employees is good enough. So whereas in the first rough sketch, I was pretty focused on that story. Do you understand what I mean by that? What the people look like. This man standing back here has his hands, head tilted back a little bit, and he's got a big smile, hands on hips. This man's leaning forward. There's a white man leaning forward, arm on shoulder, arm coming forward, etc. That's what I call story. Now, this phase of the sketch process, though, my job changes a little bit. And you can see by the way that I used, it's a lot more precise now. What I'm doing now is much more careful. So my anatomy has to be correct, stuff like that. And let's start with this man right here. This is one of the African American men. By the way, I use that term under protest. I believe it's actually a racist term, but that's all right. It's you can't get in trouble for using it because it's the politically correct term. Yeah, I think the term should be black. That's another story. And if you want, I can give you reasons for that, but that's all right. We don't have to do it. All right, and he's standing here. Here's where I'm going to use this photograph, a little bit of Google research, right? And I think this is factory workers in the 1890s. I think every one of them has suspenders, and every one of them is wearing an apron. They're high-waisted, that is, they're pulling their pants up higher than we would today. Sleeves rolled up. So I think, now here's another thing. 4 out of the 5 are wearing hats. But that doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't rub me the right way. I don't like the idea of hats for some reason. But the rest of that information is quite helpful. But first of all, let's just get him standing. And again, I've already told the story a little bit of body language, but I need to refine it a little bit now. I'm going to have his arms just hanging straight at his side. And then suspenders. I love the suspenders. I'm glad I looked up. And what kind of collar? Looks to me like a no collar. I don't know what you call that kind of shirt. I have one like it. And then suspenders and adjustment mechanism on the suspenders. And then an apron. That seems appropriate to me. So part of the story here is Major James Coker was very good to his employees, is the story, and I have testimony to that effect, including both black and white. So, you know, part of the story. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that'll do. So I am going to send this, I would call this a finished sketch. I'm going to send this finished sketch to my client. But in this case, I believe I'm safe to go ahead. There's a big deadline on this job. I have to have it finished Tuesday, and I'm tied up all day Monday. So finishing my mural that I've been working on. He looks like he's got skinny jeans on, so let's fix that. Yeah, I like that. I like that man's expression. Part of the story, besides the fact that Major James Coker, he's a real person, of course. This is his biography being written by his great-grandson, who's hiring me to illustrate the book. Part of the story is that he was a resident of South Carolina, and I believe it was Sherman's army that came through his part of the country, and I'm trying to remember now. Did they burn down his farm? I'm not sure. I can't remember. Probably. But the part I remember is, and I've got an illustration here somewhere, after Sherman's army went through. The only thing James Coker had to his name was one old swayback mule, old and past its prime, and 2 sacks of feed corn that the Union Army had missed. So that's part of the story here. This is really quite a small final sketch. I'm working smaller than normal. Okay, so if the boss man has his suit coat open, wait, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think this guy can have a suit coat too. I think that's appropriate. Does that look right? Right, then the third man, the last man here, also a black man. Not leaning in and not leaning in part of this little confab, but instead standing back just one step. But very comfortable, obviously. Again, that's the story that we're trying to tell. Standing back with his head thrown back and clearly laughing, clearly enjoying whatever's going on. So again, that's my job as the illustrator, is to tell the story visually. Sleeves rolled up. Again, I'm getting this from the photograph that I downloaded. Looked at a bunch of photographs on Google and downloaded this one. Rather high waist, and then another work apron. I'm going to change the the floor line, the horizon here a little bit, because it's not working out. I started to say this a while ago and then interrupted myself. So when I had my another little drawing tip, perspective, when I had my vanishing points taped down and draw all these lines, I drew just a whole bunch of lines pointing at the vanishing point, going both directions, so that I can fill in by sight, so to speak. I can like the line that I just drew, I don't have to reconstruct. I don't have to put together my mechanical vanishing point. I don't have to put it back together in order to fill a line, because my eye can easily discern this arc and this arc. Does that make sense? So if you're doing an illustration or a painting that has a lot of perspective lines in it, don't just draw necessarily the lines that you need. Draw a bunch of extra ones too. There, you can ignore them later, you know, cover, erase them as I'm doing right now, or paint over them, whatever. But draw a whole bunch, whatever that, it's a relative term. Draw several so that you can fill in all you need as the scene, the drawing gets developed. All right, I like the idea of a round rug, probably a woven rug. Nothing really fancy, but pretty ubiquitous. I imagine in the 1890s. Still pretty ubiquitous today, actually. Sometimes called a rag rug or a woven rug, and it was back in the day, often usually made out of ends of fabric woven together into cords, and then the cords rolled up to create a rug. More information than you needed, but there you go. I'm going to do just a little bit of shading on the black guys, just to help me remember. I don't think I'll forget, but I just want to make sure that when I'm doing the final artwork, I don't get mixed up and forget that these two guys are black. These are the 4 windows that we see. I'll show you the photograph again. That we see in this photograph. They're not terribly large, so they don't go all the way to the floor. They don't go all the way to the ceiling. Let's see. Yeah, I think I've got it. All right. But I was going to put a desk in here. So this is or a table, I don't know which it is, but some kind of furniture. There's no room for them, so hang on. No room for that big piece of furniture, so bear with me. And I'm going to make all of these windows open, not closed, open, because it is South Carolina, and for some reason it's not winter, so no air conditioning, therefore all the windows would be open, of course. Trying to indicate their double hung windows, one set of windows in front of the other, and then we get rid of these lines completely. Oh, and then we had a fan. Where is that? Oh, by the way, here's what I was looking for earlier. Here's James Coker as a young man. Here he is as an old man. So this is what I'm basing this particular illustration that's on that photograph. And I had looked up a picture of a fan, like a, fan with a blade that spins. And I don't see it here now, so I'm not sure that I printed it out. but I can remember pretty much what it looked like. In fact, I tried to look up, a fan from the 1890s or something like that, and it looked a lot like the fans I remember from when I was a kid. And I was not alive in the 1890s, I promise you. But I vaguely remember fans looking like this. They didn't have much protective, shield around them. They were real, like everything else, but in the day, real danger to fingers. Oh boy, took us a long time to learn some lessons, didn't it? Oh, and then over here is supposed to be Carolina Fiber Company. Oh, and I forgot to look this up. So bear with me just a minute. I'm leaning back here to my computer. Carolina. I'm going to see if there's a company logo. And of course, any logo I find, I'm going to call logo LOGO. Carolina Fiber Company logo. And then I'm going to hit Google image search. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit and just get a look at it. I want to get to my other sketch very shortly, which will be my first rough sketch. So this is, again, this is what I call here first rough sketch, and I tweaked that in Photoshop here. No, there's no Carolina Fiber Company. No. Okay, I'm on my own. So I'll make something up. So make up something that looks like turn of the 20th century. It would be C-A-R-O-L-I-N-A, an arced Carolina serif type fiber, C-O period. And then here, I'll put this, whatever this, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to put it in a frame. And this is another piece of furniture. I don't know what it is, but offices have furniture in them. And a couple books. There we go, a couple books on top of that. There we go. Let's put a little tiny hint of crown molding up here. Nothing fancy. All right, is that good enough? I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little more detail. I think so. Who's saying hi over here? You're exactly right. It is the hard part. And it is the foundation. Thank you very much for that insightful comment. You're exactly correct. This is the hard part and exciting part. You could say that, sure. All right, so now let's leave all that and go now to my first rough sketch. And I'm not going to read this to you, but here's my client's description of this, and this is a very unpleasant subject matter. He wants an illustration of James Coker. Here he is as a young man now, being carried off the battlefield at Lookout Mountain, Tennessee. He was wounded. It's a miracle he survived. It really is. Horrible wound. And has walked with a limp and a cane the rest of his life. So, the words are Lookout Mountain, Major Coker, Absolute Agony, Bone Exposed, Yuck, Bleeding, Being Carried Away on a Blanket Through Rough Country, Being Carried by his slave, former slave York, and Sergeant Nettles, whoever that is. A wooded scene, blah, blah. Okay, I think that's all I need to... Here we go. So how in the world? Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm switching tools. So this was my fine line detail drawing pencil, right? Because that's what is appropriate for that. But now I'm going to my fat pencil. By the way, if you don't know this tool, it's just simply a graphite. I like it. I would never have bought this, I don't think, but somebody gave me one, and I like it so much I now own 3. Okay, so one of the ways to begin such a challenge is let's do thumbnails. So this is what I call a thumbnail, and the focus will be on the man's face being carried in a blanket with a shattered left hip. So maybe his hand is, you know, out in expression of agony. Oh, this can be fun, isn't it? Another blanket over here. I don't know how. Actually, some part of the other story describes 3 people carrying him. Sergeant Nettles, Samuel Nettles, York. By the way, part of the story here, let me pull up one of my old illustrations. Part of his story is that little boy James and his best friend was the slave named York. And that's again illustrated in this illustration. They were lifelong friends. James Coker ended up supporting York in his old age, both of their old ages. Anyway, quite the tale. Okay, so there's one idea. This is what you hear me say most often when it comes to doing rough sketches. It's when it's like, dang, how do you even start? What angle? What does it look like? So again, I'm being the novelist or the movie director, whichever you want to call it. Let's try his head at this end. Well, that doesn't work very well. This is what I recommend most often, is just keep your pencil moving. Okay, let's start now with York. Ignore the blanket that he's being carried in. There's his shattered hip. And he was wearing spurs. I guess he'd been riding a horse. And this part of the story is the spur on his boot kept catching on the bushes. So his left hip is shattered, and he's got a boot with a spur, and the spur is catching on the bushes as they carry him to relative safety. Relative is very much the word. And he was begging the men to leave him alone and let him die. That's part of the story, all part of the human condition. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Now let's start with, okay, so the key often to getting a sketch done is just keep your pencil moving. Here's another tip. When you get a little bit dry, I wouldn't say I'm dry yet, but I'll go ahead and demonstrate anyway. Pick up a different tool. In this case, I've just traded this large graphite pencil for brown So simply the different color kind of, okay, I'm getting stuck here. I keep drawing the same thing over and over. So let's try something very different. Simply the fact that it's a different color will put my brain in a slightly different, I don't know what the word is, mood, slightly different place. The different color will spark, a burst of creativity simply because it's brown. Isn't that crazy? Crazy but true. How about this? I kind of like the idea of one of the men who's carrying him, of his head being outside the frame of the picture. I mean, he's important in the story because he's saving Major Coker's life, but he's not really that important. The focus here is to be on Major Coker, the expression on his face, the mangled hip. Ugh. So I could have the men, their heads. You can tell they're there, but they don't need to be. Whew, let's try starting somewhere completely different. Let's just start with looking up at so I'm pulling on of course, my anatomy drawing skills, such as they are. Yeah, grimace, eyes closed, perhaps. Grimace, mustache, beard. So if that's where his head's at, then yeah. Oh, there you go. Scrunched up shoulders, shoulders hunched up. Right. That would be. And this arm's coming almost straight toward us. And of course, fingers in a disposition of agony. By the way, that means the when a hand at rest is like this, right? And hand in agony is all the muscles tensed, both front and back. That's what creates that claw-like. Is the front that both muscles are tense, so it's tensed against you. It's not like this. It's not like this. It's both. Anyway, I'm giving you more information than you need, but again, that's my job as an artist, is to understand enough about human anatomy that I can, at least in theory, that I can draw. No, that's not working. Let's try this. See, now if I do something like that, I'm not sure where the blanket is. Here's the blanket, I guess. This is a very interesting assignment. By the way, in drawing, I'm not worried about which, like, is this his left, or is it, I'm not worried, because if I accidentally draw his right hip wounded, I'll just turn it over and draw, or in Photoshop, turn it over. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter which hip I show wounded at this point. But anyway, let's just say it's this one right here, the one toward us. Yucky gore stuff. Boot and spur. So, see, the problem with that's a good shot of Major Coker. The problem is, let me demonstrate what I mean. If this is the angle that I just illustrated, well, then the man picking him up would be standing right here with a blanket. Do you see? And the other man on the other side, we would see absolutely none. here's the man on this side, right? Picking up. I mean, it's hard to pick up a 180-pound dead weight male. Do you understand? 180. That's each man's carrying, in theory, 90 pounds in a blanket. Not an easy task. So, and maybe I could add a third man. It seems like I read something about a third name, but I might have been confused. In any case, that'd be. But do you see the problem here with this angle? This is realistic, in my opinion, but we can't see him at all. So then maybe we should turn it. We should be looking straight up. Okay, well, let's try that then. So here he is. We're looking up his nose. Here's his brow. Here's his chin. Here's his torso. Again, one arm coming up toward this person perhaps, and this arm extended down toward his wounded. Are you with me? So we're looking like straight up at him. Mantegna's Montagna, Dead Christ, famous painting in art history because of its foreshortening, an early example of a really good foreshortening in painting. All right, so would that work? And then here's the blanket. And the men and the one man. And again, if these guys are standing up too straight, so I don't know if that might work. Are you with me? Are you joining me in this struggle? Thank you, all you wonderful, for leaving nice comments, even though I can't read your name. So let's take this approach for a minute. That seems to be working fairly well. It's a little bit like the very first one that I started, but more straight on instead of at an angle. And if this goes on much longer, I will I will end this broadcast. But somebody might be all right. Now let's start now with the men. I'm trying to pick up, again, I'm just saying, 180-pound man in a blanket. So very much a power lift pose. Do you see? Arms straight, back arched, legs under center of gravity, maybe even legs coming underneath. But he can't do that too much, because if this man wiggles, this guy's going down on his can. Do you understand? If nothing else, I hope you're getting. Now I see I've switched again to. There we go. There we go. There we go. I'm going to switch, get rid of the brown pencil. By the way, if I get tired of that, I can, of course, pick up a blue pencil. All right, let's shift gears. This has some promise right here, but I'm going to change it just a little bit and I'm going to trace. Roughly trace this sketch, and they'd be wearing hats. I guess I take it they're Confederate soldiers, so I'll have to look up what Confederate soldiers are wearing, right? Not Confederate officers, just rank and file Confederate soldiers, and one of them is his a black man. The rest of the story that I've read previously is that he was taken to a prisoner of war camp, I think, which in the Civil War, like, 80% of the internees in a prisoner of war camp died of starvation and infection. Oh, one of the most horrific books I ever read was the Andersonville Diary, or Diaries, I don't remember. Andersonville Diary, this infamous Confederate prisoner of war camp during the Civil War. Andersonville Diaries. I only read it because I'm a sucker for history. Our whole nation right now could do with a whole gigantic influx of history. All right, so there we go. I feel like that's the best illustration, the best sketch that I've got so far. So there's a couple things I'm liking about this. One is he's not really on the blanket yet. It makes us go, ooh, 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 careful, you're about to drop him, which I like that. That's a good story. And I think I would crop it, as I said earlier, so that at least one of the men's heads would be completely off the frame. So like this. And this would allow us to see his face. We don't have to see, good, I'm thinking out loud. We don't have to see, right now it's his left arm. Although, again, if I want, yeah, this works. This should be his wounded hip here. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm gonna redraw it now, right now. The only thing that's not realistic about this arm is not a load-bearing, it's way too high. Now that could be that he's just getting the blanket situated. That's believable. I'm going to try to put it down a little bit. And the only reason I'm rambling like this to you guys and talking this way is again just because, in my opinion, this is what an artist does. At least that's what that's what me artist does anyway. Oh, there we go, a little flap of the blanket, hanging out, so he doesn't have the corner exactly. And again, I don't know what the uniform is. I'll have to look that up. One of them evidently was a sergeant, so I will look up. Oh yeah, and head twisted. That's a good angle. That's a good twist. Head turned. That, first of all, it lets us see it. Plus, when a man is in agony, it's very likely that he would be literally writhing in pain. Isn't this fun Saturday afternoon activity? And there we go. There's his hand of agony up there. And here's the shattered hip. So I don't know what we see. It just ripped up and obviously blood. And this arm, this leg, can be drawn up. That's realistic. So this leg, the wounded leg, is dragged out straight. And he's wearing boots, evidently, because he's got spurs on. So evidently he was riding a horse. Right, I like this energy, this angle right here, this blanket. Oh, and a little bulge that represents his arm and shoulder, his weight up there. Now, I've said several times that I feel like this is the kind of work that an artist does. I'm assuming that's the case, because I've never been any other artist but me. and I have discovered, back in the day when this was my full-time work doing illustrations like this, I did very often encounter art directors, that is, people who worked for the ad agency. Not all of them, but many, who radically underestimated, what's the word, the amount of academic, I'll use that term, the amount of academic work that goes in to an illustration. For instance, here's one of my favorites. You can tell I'm still upset about this one. I had a major illustration to do that included a bunch of, that included milk cows. And I took my color sketch to the ad agency, and one of the art directors said, "No, milk cows are black and white." Well, maybe if you're some other artist, you just draw whatever the heck cow you feel like drawing. But if you're me, I still remember to this day, there's 5 kind of milk cattle in America: Guernsey, Jersey, Ayrshire, Holstein, and blank. So there you go. I can still remember 4 of the 5. And I still remember that 7% are Ayrshire, 14% are Guernsey, 30-some, blah, 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 and Holstein are like 44%. Anyway, so this is nearly 20 years ago, and I still remember the numbers, partly because this guy irritated me because he was so ignorant. So maybe other illustrators don't do the kind of work that I do. I don't know. But good grief, I didn't turn in an illustration without knowing what color dairy cows are. And I had a brown, I had a Jersey cow. And this art director thought that I'd made a mistake. Well, he was just ignorant. Anyway, forgive me now. You can tell I'm just irritated now. All right, here's what I think I'm going to do. At the moment, I don't think I'm going to give my client 2 rough sketches. I'm just going to give him 1. Because, as you can see, I've worked pretty hard on this one. Now, of course, that doesn't mean he's going to like it. So I'm taking a bit of a risk by only doing 1 only sending him 1 sketch. But sometimes you can get away with it, because the reason is, and you've seen the work I've done, I still have to look up what a Confederate sergeant, I'm sorry, I keep getting out of the framework there. I have to look up, and a hat on this guy, that would be good, because it would block his eyes. That's a great idea. See, because I don't want a lot of emotional energy going up. Oh, a mustache up here, that's good. I do not want a lot of visual, that's what I mean by emotional energy. I don't want a lot of attention on this face, because that's not what the story is about. The story is all about this guy. And this is going to be the slave York, so we'll indicate that by dark skin there. And he probably doesn't have a uniform on, I don't know. All right, so bear with me just a minute. I'm going to end this broadcast shortly, but before I do, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slap this sketch on a coffee machine over here, and I'm going to blow it up at least 200%. Oh, I wonder, fit to page. Let's try that. Oh, no, that's not working. Okay, bear with me just a minute. This is a slow copy machine. Digitally, it's going from 100%, 1 number at a time. Now we're at 160. Bear with me, sorry about that. I'm going to do 200%. Close enough. And let's make it darker. Okay. And now start black copy. Okay. So let me move you guys. For those of you who joined me in the last little while, I'm the one who's been rambling on forever and ever. Anybody else saying hi over here? Yeah. Hello, Uncle. No, it's definitely a commission. Fairy tales, Russian fairy tales and images of big turnips. I love it. People would pay more attention if there were animals. That's very possible. But the commission here doesn't include any animals. All right, so that didn't turn out very good. Let's try that again. I'm going to start it, make another copy. Why did it get cut off? Let's try that again. So what I'm trying to do here is blow up my sketch so that I can do a more refined sketch. Hey, while I'm doing that over at my computer, I'm sorry you're not here to look at it. Let's look at Confederate Sergeant, S-A-R-G-E-N-T, uniform. I probably misspelled sergeant, but all right, there we go. So let me move your background here. That's pretty slick, high-tech operation, isn't it? All right. So it was this size, and now it's this size. And I'm going to do next. Oh, come on! It's a bunch of costumes. I don't want this costumes. So I'm going to, again, turn on my light table. I use my light table a lot. I don't know if you've figured that out. I do. I've done so for years. Now, do I like this angle best or this angle best? By the way, part of the reason I do this is that I see my, anatomical errors show up really quickly. Okay, bear with me just a minute. I'm going to try to print off. Looks like I found a good well, maybe not. I want a all right. Yeah, I'm going to draw it this way and make some corrections, like anatomical. This guy looks pretty good over here, and this should be I'm sorry, sleeves rolled up. Now, I don't know if his shirt would be tucked in or untucked, but I'm going to say after a hard day at the battle, who the heck knows or cares, it's going to be untucked. Okay, and here's his one hand holding that corner of the blanket. Hang on, that didn't work at all. Bear with me. I want to get a good copy of this uniforms. I'm still a little bit bothered by, I guess he had this man, this pose, this position does not allow for the lifting of 180 pound. I'm just making that part up, of course. Does not allow for the lifting of a 180 pound body. But let's just assume that he's not actually ready to heft to lift it just yet. He's just getting ready. So then his, you see what I mean? He's getting ready to lift, but he's not lifting it right now because, again, that's not the right, not quite the right body position for lifting 90 pounds. But it's, and this guy's even worse. All right, I'm getting there. Hang on, y'all. Oh boy. All right, I'm getting close enough, I guess. Let's just print this off. Fit to media, there we go. All right, I've got a print coming off in a few minutes about what does a Confederate By the way, I don't want to get into it. I really don't want to get into it today, but I am keenly aware that the whole story that I'm illustrating here today is a very hot topic in America today. And as you can imagine, I have strong thoughts on the subject. Doesn't mean I'm right. Just it just means I have strong thoughts. Oh, come on. It's just so funny that I'm talking about, Confederate soldiers and so on, and slaves and former slaves and all that kind of stuff, as if I don't have a clue of what's going on in our society today. But I just don't want to get into it at the moment. Okay, so here's his wounded thigh. Here's his other leg drawn up a little bit. I'm going to have him holding the edge of the blanket. I think that's a better. I'm going to use a smaller pencil now to do the details of his anguished face. Slightly flared nostrils, blah, 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 all the stuff that, if you're an artist, you've spent time studying anatomy for times just like this when you have to make up stuff on the spur of the moment. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Oh, I missed the side of his head. And he's got a beard. That's to add a little bit more challenge to the story I'm supposed to indicate. I'm looking for the photograph that I have of Major Coker around here somewhere. There it is. All right, so this is what he looks like without an so really quite a nice face, straight nose. Oh, but no beard up there. Good. That's good to know. So just a long goatee. And hair to the side, but of course hair a little bit messed up because he's just been mortally wounded. Whew. I can't believe I just did that. I meant to draw this on I meant to draw it on a separate piece of paper and I didn't. Okay, so now I have to make a copy of this. And my copy machine is doing two things at the same time. But I'm canceling. Come on, come on, come on. Nice, easy jazz music going on while I'm drawing this horrific scene. Okay, I'm going to make a copy of that so that I can turn it over and draw it the other way around. Yes, I have to, blood, guts, gore. That's exactly correct, Uncle. I already drew a picture of his bone. I don't know that it's his bone, but where did it go? There we go. How about that? That was really a fun, whoops, there we go, sorry. That was really a fun illustration that I did a year or so ago. And there's the bullet that did the damage. Not the bullet, but a sample. It's called a mini ball, but it's really French minier ball. New technology in the Civil War. All right, so this has come off the printer. Do you understand? This is, so now I can turn it over. Let's not make the same mistake twice. Well, now I'm wondering, wait a minute. After having done all that, I think I'm just gonna do some shading on this copy right here. All right, so I'm gonna end this broadcast here. I've given you plenty, way too much information. Hope somebody watches this who can benefit from it. Let me show you just real briefly what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do some shading. Here's what that means, what that looks like. Use a blending stub so you can, I want to be able to send my client, you know, a sketch that is interpretable, a sketch that he doesn't have to work too hard to see what's going on. So I want it to be fairly tight and accurate, so he doesn't have to do a whole lot of interpretation. And again, I'm taking a bit of a chance here by sending my client only one sketch instead of two, like more normal procedure for me sometimes would be to send my client, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But that's not normal. Looking for the page that I showed you at the beginning of this process. Never mind. Anyway, I gave him option A and option B. That's more typical. A, B, C, A, B, C, D. You know, to give my client 3 or 4 different alternatives would be more typical for me. So I'm taking a chance because my client might come back and say, no, I was thinking more blank, right? The reason I'm taking this chance is because, frankly, I feel pretty good about the sketch. Now, my feelings may be completely unjustified. My client might come back and say, no, that's not at all what I was looking for. And that's the client's prerogative, do you understand? That's the essence of being an illustrator. You're working for somebody else. That's why they're paying you the big bucks, or in this case, the medium bucks. This is a pretty low budget job. Yeah, and I didn't have to take it, so I'm not complaining. So why are you doing a low budget job? Because I decided to, and partly because I've already done 6 or 8 illustrations for this book, and he's already paid me, a fair amount of money. So I don't feel like I have to gouge. I don't want to gouge anyway, but I don't feel like I have to. I don't feel like it would be fair for me to charge him even fair market value. So I'm not getting paid much, but I'm getting paid, and it's my job to do a good job for the client. That's the way I feel. I keep saying I'm going to end this broadcast, and then I keep going. Now I want some background. Oh yeah, some trees, wooded. So I think real simple. I just want it to appear that he's being carried through a forest scene. Okay, my client gave me a whole lot more information, including a painting of Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, and so on and so on and so forth. But in my opinion, all of that is quite unnecessary. Now, my client might come back to me and say, no, I would really like to see, the Yankee. I know, I'll put the hint of a house way back here. Maybe that'll satisfy. But in my opinion, this is the focus of the scene, and everything else is kind of distracting. So I'm going to recommend, buy my sketch. I'm going to recommend that my client go with my idea and keep all the background fairly abstract. So we'll see. He may go for it or may not. You never know about clients. Even ones you've already done 8 or 10 illustrations for. You never know. Actually, I do know a little bit about this client. It's fairly literal. You begin to get to understand them after a while. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I won't show this part to you, just trust me. I'm going to scan this in my computer scanner and open up this image in Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to adjust the lights and darks. It'll be quite a bit more dramatic. Here we go. Like here, those are the A, B illustrations. Good, I found it. Here we go. So for instance, here is my pencil sketch, right? And here's what I did to it in Photoshop. Do you see the difference? So tons more values. And this is what I'm showing my client. I didn't show my client this. So I think that's a good tip. That's a good idea. So that's what I'm going to do here as well. There's my pencil sketch, but I can do it in Photoshop and make it the composition much more interesting with lights and darks and so forth. Anyway, let me see any other questions I should answer. Fainting is right, Uncle, but part of the story is he was begging for his life, not to live, but in fact he was begging the men who were rescuing him to let him die. Now, I don't know what that would mean. I guess anyway, I don't blame him. I think if I were in his situation with a hit that looked like what I just showed you, I mean, the horrors of war are just beyond description. Most of us, thank God, most of us have no idea, because most of us have never had to go through it. Most human beings have. Anyway, yeah, he hadn't fainted yet. Whew. And he went on to become an entrepreneur and a major successful businessman in the post-war South Carolina. After the enemy left him with nothing but one swayback mule and 2 packs of seed corn, I mean. Seed corn. All right, thank you all for your company and your fun and your chats. Did they not use a pole stretcher type? That's a good question. The story says they were carrying him on a blanket. That's all it says. So I guess I've been assuming. My client will correct me, perhaps, if I'm wrong. Maybe I've shown it completely wrong. It'd make a lot more sense, but maybe they didn't have time. I mean, I do know from reading the story that they're still within gunshot of the enemy lines. So this is not like behind the scenes, behind the lines where they're safe. Not at all. All this is happening while bullets are still whizzing. The battle is essentially over, but bullets are still whizzing through around them and through the trees. So I know. How about if I do this? I could put a great big target on the back of this guy's shirt. I'm just being silly. I'm not gonna do that. Do you remember probably my favorite Far Side? I'm a huge Far Side bummer of a birthmark, Hal. Oh my goodness. I wonder if you just Google bummer of a birthmark, Hal, if you would see. And I definitely want the hat over the eyes. That's a good solution right there. Far Side cartoon, bummer of a birthmark, Hal. After I end this broadcast, I'm going to look it up and see if just that will bring up this one of my favorite cartoons of all time, probably by one of my favorite cartoonists of all time. What was that guy's name? Gary Chapman, or is that the multi-murderer guy? Anyway, you could put a pole type under the blanket, like they're putting him into it. Oh, that's a great idea. If my client doesn't want the idea, that I don't know. No, I think he's more likely to object to that. We can add it. I'll give him that option. But that's a great solution. Well, part of the story, again, and I read it, is that his spur. Oh, by the way, in Photoshop, I need to turn this over, right? Because right now I've got his right hip is the wounded one. I talked about that earlier, but that doesn't matter at all. I don't worry about that. And again, this is pretty common for me, common practice when I'm doing a rough sketch, and it left-right matters. I don't worry about it a bit in rough sketch stage because I know I can flop it in Photoshop or by tracing it. See there, look at his. No, it's his left hip that's wounded. Good grief, let's make up our minds here. All right, thanks. Yeah, blanket wrapped around. That's exactly the picture I'm getting. So we'll see. Maybe my client will like that idea. I might even mention it to him in the verbiage, the email that I send. I have a lot of work to do. Not the least of which is I need to get the first illustration, which is in this pile here somewhere. Oh, it's way down in the pile somewhere. Need to get the first illustration on the final illustration finished. All right, that's all. Thanks, y'all. Been fun. I hope to do another broadcast later today, but we'll see how that goes. Thanks, Uncle. Appreciate it. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.